Hey, welcome back, everybody, and Happy New Year again. My guest today, we met because of a mutual acquaintance of Kate Colbert and Silvertree Publishing. And we met back in, I think it was maybe September, October, something right around the release of your book. And I'm not kidding. We started talking and I felt like we had known each other since we were kids or something. It was just a smooth, easy, ongoing conversation. And he's got a podcast. He had me on. He must have been desperate looking for somebody. Right? I took him up on the offer. And I reciprocated that offer. So first and foremost, welcome to the show, Chris. And thank you for taking time out of your busy day to spend it with me.
Absolutely, Peter. There is no place I would rather be than on your show. The pleasure is all mine. And I'm happy to see wherever this conversation goes. But one thing I will say is I can guarantee it's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's just get right to it. You had last year, you came out, I think it was like in August of last year with the book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that it takes you from, I love it, compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. I love that.
Is correct. You nailed it. Yes. August 15th, 16th was when it came out. Yes.
So did you write this during the pandemic? Were you looking for something to do? What was the reason that you wanted to write this book?
Yeah. So actually taking a trip before that.
Okay.
Because there was a huge buildup. So probably, and I won't take you like all the way back, but for those that have listened to my show, followed me for a while, they know I've invested since I was 10. Pseudo started advising when I was 14-ish, started working at the big firms when I was 18, found an amazing family company in 2015, and then spun off and started Capitalize Your Finances, the financial planning business, February of 2022, which was inspired by my podcast, Capitalize Your Finances, available on Spotify and Apple. And that is also the title of the book. Now, it probably started to become a thing, I would say indirectly in 2016. And it was really simple. I started looking around also in 2016, I was 20, I think 24, 25, something like that. So let's just face it. A lot of people aren't going to trust their life savings, especially those that are older with a 25-year-old, right? Like it's just not going to happen. And so I told myself, okay, for the clients that I have, I'm going to be obsessively relentless with being prudent for them, which is what you should do anyways.
Right.
But then even going above and beyond that, anything that I have left over from the proceeds of the business or the practice when I was at the previous firm, I'm going to reinvest in myself. A lot of these businesses, I'm in a unique business because a lot of these businesses, they take all of their profits and they like to reinvest back in the business to get it to grow. Now, ours and mine, I'm just going to speak for myself, is a little bit different because I've told myself, hey, if I'm going to recommend like a longer term type of investment, whether it's a stock or private equity, real estate, whatever, I would much rather have my wife and I in it first and do the diligence on it, because if it's good enough for a client, it should be good enough for us. And so because of that, I told myself, okay, step one, I'm going to take these proceeds and actually lose some return, because you could go and reinvest it in your business. That's going to provide a much higher return on your investment, and invest alongside clients. I'm not saying that means they're a bad investment, but anyone that runs a business knows that a successful business, if you reinvest constantly in that business for a number of reasons, it is going to be your highest return on investment. Now, that started happening for me in about 2016, 17. And how that came to the topic of writing the book was I started realizing, okay, I'm talking to other advisors or planners in the industry, and maybe I'm just seeing something that they're not. And so then I figured out, oh, this is like my framework. I didn't know that at the time, but I go, okay, I've got something here. So then you fast forward and our business really started taking off in 2020. And the blessing with that is we looked at clients' portfolios, and you're never going to say, oh my gosh, not a single investment we had, lost money. That's absolutely silly. But from a planning standpoint, clients that had either retired or have about to retire, they could still keep going at the rate that they were. And they really weren't freaking out because they understood the framework. And then for clients that were growing their net worth, they weren't really freaking out at all. And that was very unique. And then I realized, okay, I've been tested. I've been tested in this moment. My framework, we've got something here. And how, long story, getting towards the book, I promise we'll get there. Originally, in June of 2020, I was freaking out because things just weren't opening up in Washington State. And before that, I had zero social media. And my lack of love for social media. Mm-hmm. And so I said, screw it. I'm going to play the game. I got to do it. So I start my LinkedIn and I start connecting with people. I'm like, this is just getting ridiculous. But then it hit me. Why don't I start reaching out to my favorite researchers that I've looked up to in our industry forever? Because maybe they're at home, not doing a whole heck of a lot as well. And, I know they were busy, but they weren't nearly as busy. So I was able to connect with some of these higher up people I've looked up to in our industry. And one thing led to another. I wanted to see if they could come on like a weekly show that the company I was at before I started Capitalize Your Finances, if they wanted to become a guest. Well, it got convoluted and they thought I had a show. And me being an improv guy, because I loved improv in high school, I'm like, of course, let's go. Let's make it happen. And I remember I hung up and I'm like, uh-oh, like I've got a problem. And then I kept going with it. And I guess the problem grew because then they liked the show. So now I've got these guys that I look up to a lot with clout in the industry that are preaching a show and spreading the word on a show that truly doesn't exist. I mean, really. And so I talked to my old chairman, who's an amazing family friend. And I said, hey, you know what? Like, I think there's a demand growing here. So that's when Capitalize Your Finances became a show. It wasn't originally called that. That's what it is today. And then people started asking me toward the end of 2020, about the mid 2021, well, when are you coming out with a book? And I'm going, I never really thought of that. Yep. But if the demand of the market keeps growing, unless you are just a fool, you have to respond to that. If you are able to, of course. Right. And I was able to. And so I said, okay, you know what? This is what, and I'm a man of faith, that. This is what God's calling me to. So going all the way back to 2016, when I started figuring out what was missing in our industry, all the way through 2021, doing a tremendous amount of research out there, realizing there is a massive gap in financial planning literacy, and then filling that void. And what was beautiful about it was, unlike a lot of these books out there where it's it's either very academic with no emotion, or it's very like roo rah emotion with no financial practicality. I tried to blend all of that. And so when I wrote the book, I write like I talk. So for those of you that decide to buy the book, you're either super welcome or I'm terribly sorry. and so when I wrote it, it's me. In a lot of these books I've learned too, and Peter, I know you know this as well, I think it's like 80% of these books, nonfiction books, are ghostwritten. Now, I'm not discrediting that because time becomes extremely valuable. But if you're just getting started as an author, I can speak for myself. Some of my favorite moments were going through writing out the framework. Or I'm sure, Peter, for you, some of your favorite moments of your books was actually writing and going through that rediscovery process and going back to that moment where you fell in love with whatever it is that you're writing about.
Mhm.
And so, that's kind of how the book came up. It was a culmination of working really hard, really over the course of my entire life, but it was spearheaded in 2016, 17-ish. COVID woke up a lot of opportunity,
Mhm.
and then the market just was asking for it. And so I had to provide it.
Just out of curiosity, how long did it take you from start to finish?
I had a feeling you were going to ask that. And it's funny because a lot of people ask me that, and I just kind of rattle it off. I would say from the time I wrote my outline
Mhm.
to actually writing it and getting it published in August of 2022, it took about a year and a half, maybe a little bit more, which I've learned is very fast for writing a book.
Well, when you're focused and dedicated and you build a process of how you're going to write that book, that's
Yeah.
about what that was about a year and a half. Maybe this last one was maybe, no, I wrote this last one during the pandemic. So it was about a year and a half. It was about a year and a half till it came out. And it's just some people, will write, then they'll go away, then
Yeah.
they'll come back. But I was putting out stuff every single week. And
Yeah.
just because I want to be there tomorrow. And that's just kind of how I am.
Yeah.
And but that was just a curiosity, because I knowing you as almost as well as I think I know you, I was expecting somewhere between a year and a quarter to a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that is pretty fast. And even I think your book count is over 250 pages, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Around there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So change it. Well, keep it on the financial aspect of it. But as you're writing this book, what are some of the biggest issues that you have seen with the financial industry as it pertains to the ultimate serving of their clients?
So there's a lot there. And also I just looked just to double check. My book is 219 pages, not that anyone's
Okay.
counting. But issues. So when I was at the larger firms, I'm not going to knock the larger firms. One, I really don't want to deal with a lawsuit, especially with the daughter on the way. And then two, it's like I always like to look back and say that every moment I have had has been a positive learning experience. And that could mean either learning something to do or learning the absolute not to do.
Yeah.
So in a lot of these advisors and planners' defense, I do believe these big firms have some amazing people, and there is a purpose for these big companies. But I quickly found out what not to do. And what I mean by what not to do is you have a lot of these publicly traded companies that are just that. They're publicly traded. So hypothetically, if I'm an advisor for XYZ big firm, again, avoiding lawsuits here, and you come in and you are asking to become a potential client of mine, even if I do have the best intentions, which again, I think a lot of these people do, well, behind me in the ivory tower is a publicly traded company. And what is the publicly traded company trying to do? They are trying to do what is in the best interest of the shareholders, owners. That's not their fault. Well, if that's the case, you get so big, the only way to do that is to constantly grow and essentially hoard assets. And so eventually that alignment between having one's best interest, which is super cliche, but it's the honest God truth, and then just maximizing shareholder wealth, there's going to be a tipping point there. And as you could imagine, I spoke my mind on that, and they didn't like that. Neither of them did. So that's what I saw of what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I will say, unlike the big places, is, the family firm I was at, because some people have asked, hey, why'd you leave, etc. had nothing to do with the negatives that I had with the big groups. Like I tell people all the time, the family firm I was at, they gave me a chance, and that is worth its weight in gold. And you can never replace that. And frankly, you know what? Like my grandma said, God rest her soul, if someone's bold enough to ask you a question, they should be ready to take that bold response. And so I don't even need to explain it why, but I can tell you that as I was going through that and they let me grow and kind of do my own thing, I started to get curious as to what was going on that was so wrong, to answer that question. And a couple things that I realized was, number one, the whole framework of the industry of planning, it's kind of backwards. So for example, let's say that you come into my office. I'll just use you again. And I go, Peter, how can I help you? And you're like, hey, I need a financial plan. I need my goals. I blah, blah, blah. And so emotionally, I ask you, what are your goals? What are your dreams, etc. And then you ask someone, how do you feel about investing? And this is where it gets interesting. Most people don't have a clue. And so they go, I don't know. So I go, okay, we're going to put you in a portfolio that's the middle of the road. Not that you even know what that means to begin with. And so then you look at the market as an example, market takes off and you're lagging that by like half, because in theory, it's half as risky, right? So you should have half of the return, but you don't understand that. So now you're pissed off and you go, Chris, what the heck? And I go, well, you didn't really know. So we put you in a moderate portfolio. So you know what, now what we need to do, because you want to get more aggressive with it and your testosterone is just jacked up. You are ready to go alpha elite on your portfolio. So now what we do is we jack that up. And let's say the market has a pullback like it did in 2022. Well, now you're really mad because you temporarily lost money. You only lose when you permanently sell. And I go, okay, so you're a little bit more anxious now and you're enraged. You're like, yeah, stop the presses. So we halt that. It gets a little bit more conservative. And you see this emotional cycle, right? As you are growing one's net worth. And so I saw that and I'm like, wow, that sucks. And then I started reading a research paper that the Dalbar study puts out every year. And normally these banks are the ones that sponsor it. And so the Dalbar study is a study that puts out every year behavioral finance research, which is a fancy schmancy way of comparing how people do according to traditional financial advice versus traditional investments, whether it's, stocks, real estate, bonds, whatever. And generally speaking, those that listen to traditional advice lag to basic inflation by about 0.5%. Historic inflation, not what we got going on right now, 2.5. So I'm like, oh, that's another layer. And what really capped me off to going full tilt with Capitalize Your Finances, the business, the book, the podcast, was I started looking up, okay, is there a go-to framework out there in planning? So if your listeners are into investing, okay, they have probably heard of The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, who was Warren Buffett's teacher at Columbia University, the godfather of investing, if you will. Now, I have read The Intelligent Investor. I've read Security Analysis, which is written by Benjamin Graham and David Dodd. If you want to bleed out of every orifice of your body, I strongly recommend you go snag that thing and you buy it. It is an academic juggernaut, hellacious read. And also it was written way back in the day, so a lot of it is kind of antiquated, but it gives you an amazing framework. So I said, whoa, this is super cool, but is there anything out there today that is the equivalent, but in the planning world? And so people can understand the framework of what they need to do so they can be deadly with their own finances and be the general of their finances, as my CPA calls me. And there wasn't anything. And that's where I also got ticked off, because there was the academic side, there was the emotional side, but no one was kicking the field goal right up the middle.
Right.
And so I said, oh my gosh, that is like, God is calling me to that. And that's where I got super passionate about everything that I'm doing right now. And what I could have done was I could have done what I think any snotty, cocky, arrogant, early to mid 20s starting in our business does, which is just knock everything, because that's what you do. It's like the talking shit mentality, right?
Yep.
And it feels good in the moment. But I also remember thinking, when I was chatting with clients that I didn't get way back in the day, when you're hustling to grow your business and help people, I remember going to bed at night thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like such a buffoon for talking down, versus some of my best meetings I had. I didn't talk about competition. I mean, people can hear the chip on my shoulder in the passion just because, like, I'm loud, right? Like, I get that. But what I chose to do was I took that energy and I converted it into just positively focusing on who was right in front of me. Like Charlie Munger said, this is one of my New Year's resolutions for 2023. The best referral is sitting right in front of you on your desk. So you just are obsessively focused with whatever's in front of you, and you positively move that in the right direction. And so that's what I tried to do with my book. That's what I do on my show. And is, unlike back in the day where it was like the football field, right? You just talk smack and you start knocking all these people. I just converted that, because it's really easy to just compound negatively, but it's a lot more difficult to just climb up the hill to positivity. So, I mean, I could go through a litany of things above and beyond that, but I started at the big firms, saw what not to do, was thankful for the company that gave me a chance. And then I took that time and energy and obsessive, relentless focus that I had for what I'm doing. And I figured out, okay, how can I positively turn around my negative feelings towards what not to do?
Okay. Fair enough. And that's well versed. We serve our clients. We don't serve ourselves.
No.
And a lot of, I have fired a number of financial planners over the years because they were serving themselves and talking down to me. And I may not have the same capacity, but I do have an understanding. And it was like, okay, you're making money. And then I was the person I have now. I mean, I've had more conversations with him in 2 years than I've had with the three of them prior that I fired over a 10-year period.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And he gets it. And I'll help Phil. I'll give you a plug. Phil Lovegrove with Vorsic Financial in Worthington, Ohio. There you go, Phil.
Is he a Buckeye?
He's a Buckeye. I believe he's a Buckeye fan. He's been in Ohio and in the Columbus area for a number of years.
Yeah.
But as you're talking, and I've gone through some of the chapters in your book, and you mentioned some big event that's happening later this month.
Yes.
Gee, you got to go out and watch the video on my YouTube channel. His face just lit up. Yeah, you have a baby daughter?
I have a baby girl.
Baby girl coming into this world at the end of this month. So when she gets to be of the age, let's say 6.
Okay.
And you're going to have the first financial talk with her. Have you thought about this?
Specifically for 6, no. Have I thought about it in general? Yes.
Okay.
One thing I can tell you, and another motivation that I had when I was writing this book, was actually on the day that of Stephanie, my amazingly gorgeous wife, in my wedding in 2020. And I thought to myself, okay, what happens if something happened to me? And that was another thing that I was really motivated and inspired to do, because if something ever happened to me, I know, my mom would be taken care of if she stuck to this book. My brother, who is brilliantly smart, he's a social media guy, which is always really funny because he knows how much I despise social media. And that's literally his job. Shout out to Vital Media Studios. If you are a food company, you need to give him a call. And then like, I wanted to make sure my wife or then any of our children that because we've always wanted to have kids, were okay. Now, going back to your question of the conversations that I would have, and this is something I recommend a lot of clients do early on. So parents like to give their kids something, like an allowance per se, or some type of reward for their goods and services. And a lot of my clients ask me, like, how would you do that? And I go, well, one thing that you can do that's really easy is, okay, let's say that you are paid $5 an hour for whatever it is, mowing the lawn, doing the laundry, doing the dishes, you name it. So they know that. And by 6 or 7, hopefully you can count up to 15 if it's 3 hours. And then you give them $12. And they're going to look at you like, what in the hell? Like you said, 15, you go, uh-huh. But you also need to learn about taxes. And then they go, what? Like, why? And I'm like, well, here's the deal. Like, not why. This is how the world works. And I can tell you right away, legally, the kids are going to want to know, how do you get around that? Because they're not going to like that.
Right.
And it sounds really elementary and simple, but by the time they get to like 18 or 19, they're not going to be freaked out when they get a pay stub and they know, oh, I'm getting paid, let's just say $4,000 a month. I'm making that up. But then they only see $3,400 actually hit their bank account. There's a story. One of our really good family friends had an internship, and she called her dad after her first paycheck. And I'm keeping it anonymous just because I don't want to throw it under the bus. And she goes, Dad, she's like whispering. I think she's in the lunchroom. I think my employer's stealing from me. He's like, what are you talking about? Like from you? And she goes, yeah, this FICA person takes out X amount every month or every paycheck. Like what, and what she goes, why does she deserve that? Like, what is she doing for you? He's like, honey, that's not how it is. Right. And, I think she was 18 or 19 with her first internship. And, I think had she been exposed to a lot of those simple traits at an early age, I think that would be really valuable. Now, that's just understanding like taxes. Let's say that my daughter hypothetically wanted to start the classic lemonade stand.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The classic lemonade stand.
I would be all for that. But one thing I would say, just knowing what I know from investing or planning, is I would educate her on location. Because a lot of these parents, what they do, and it's not a knock to these parents, they're trying their best to be supportive to their children. But think about it. You go right outside your house. Yeah, it's a hot summer day. You're on your driveway or the corner. And that day, you sell, I don't know, a couple cups of lemonade and you call it a day. And that's it. Well, I would take it another step farther. And I'd say, okay, honey. So this was the first day you made, let's say $100. I'm making this up. So tomorrow, where are you going to put that lemonade stand? And kids are brilliantly curious. And so chances are my daughter would go, well, Daddy, why would we move? Well, so if you made $100 here, what if we went up to Safeway or Fred Meyer and we were right outside? Or Whole Foods, maybe Whole Foods, right? Yeah. And so what if we put that up there? And yeah, you have to move it, and we got to pay a little bit of gas, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're taking out of mommy and daddy's bank account to do that. But you make $1,000. I know it's extreme, but it's easy numbers. Would you do that? Would you want to make 1,000 versus 100? She'd go, absolutely. Well, then let's do that. And then it might get uncomfortable because there will be people that constantly would reject and reject and reject. But you are building up so many fortuitous calluses in her business mind that by the time she gets to 14 or 15, even if she chooses not to own or run a business, she understands the art of business.
Mhm.
And that's something that I've actually told a lot of clients, not specifically, but like, if we're having dinner or something, they'll ask me some of those things, and it's always going that extra mile. You want to open up their minds. And I never had that. It's not that I didn't have that opportunity, but I wasn't really pushed into that, but I was inherently curious about it. I just didn't know. I didn't know the vote. I mean, when you're 6, you don't have the vocab to understand that, but
Right.
what a gift you could provide if you're a parent to guide them to those opportunities.
Your daughter's gonna, by the time she's 20, I'll go out on the limb. I think she'll be in college, but she'll have a side business. She will, if you keep giving her these lessons in life, and my son did the same thing when the first time he got his paycheck. Why did they take out half my money?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought I was going to get this. Well, this is the way
Yeah.
the world works. And
Yeah.
and it finally sunk into him once he saw consistently. It was always that first check, and who's FICA? I'm gonna go shoot this person. FICA.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just building, and use the word calluses. Just building up these calluses
Mhm.
goes a long way in learning. And I believe that's part of the reason why we've got some financial illiteracy,
Mhm.
because the calluses were never built into the parents for
No.
whatever reason.
Yep.
And people are afraid of numbers and afraid of money and so on and so forth. And just by reading the book, The Lemonade Stand, I forgot who wrote it. There's enough of them out there.
Yes.
And just having a basic sense of business and how it works,
Oh yeah.
goes a long way in having a better understanding of what a dollar really is.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
And I that's your daughter's be a very lucky lady. But then
I
you got
appreciate
to
that.
do the same thing for your son, because you have to have two.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that, because like a lot of my friends, not so much guy friends, but like a lot of friends, like our couple friends,
Mm.
the gals will ask, like, did you want a boy? Did you want a girl? And I can only speak for myself. Growing up, I mean, I had a brother, or have a brother, and then I have 2 cousins who are both dudes. So
Yeah.
like, I guess intuitively, or I guess not intuitively, subconsciously, I thought, well, we're probably going to have a son, but I never really thought of it. And I never really cared what we had. It was even interesting. I remember I was actually just finishing up a podcast, and my wife walked through the door, and she's like, oh my gosh, we're pregnant. And for me, and this is just how I process things, I try to be very objective. I kind of have to be, right? Like, if a client came in and like, I was just emotionally freaking out, that's not going to instill confidence, but that's just who I am. So I was excited, but I was like objectively excited. I was like, okay. She's like, that's it. I'm like, well, what, I mean, it's not going to be here. She's like, you're not going to cry or anything. I was like, well, no, I mean, I don't know, pinch the back of my arm, or, like put some pepper under my nose, like maybe, but like, it was very objective with it. And then once we found out we were having a girl, of course I was excited to know, but initially it was just one of those things where I'm like, oh, I'm having a girl. Okay. But now as it's gotten a lot closer, and I've talked to a lot of my friends that have daughters, I am proud to be a girl dad. I've heard
Yeah.
being a girl dad is pretty great. They said that, for the first year or 6 months or so, you're going to be completely useless. And then once she starts to get emotion, she's just going to fall in love with you. And then from about 6 months on till about 11, it's pretty awesome. And then just hell just sweeps over when you enter the tweens and the teens. So, I'm mentally developing the calluses for 10 years down the road.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, at least I'm trying.
Yeah, good luck with that. We were lucky enough to have a son,
Okay.
and in the sense of having a child, but hindsight being 2020, we should have had at least 2, because he is incredibly spoiled. And he's the first one to tell you that he is.
Mhm.
And luckily, when he was younger, I was actually working at another university in Columbus, Ohio, and I could have that freedom to go and spend with him and stuff. And my wife was managing a Macy's department store, which was completely hectic. But I was his best friend, which is
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
But then I'm still trying to work, and I'm still trying to do. I said, "Come on, Dad, let's go play some video. Let's go do this. Let's go do that." And at first, I was kind of a little apprehensive about doing that. And I
Right.
said, "Shit, what the hell? You know what?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. At some point in time, he thinks I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. At some
Right.
point in time, I know he's gonna think I'm the biggest idiot. Now we're in that stage. We're starting to come out of it. He's 22, so we're starting
Okay.
to come out of that. He's seeing that
Yeah.
Dad's not as dumb as I thought he's been.
Yeah. Yeah. But he didn't say you're not dumb.
No,
You're not
but
as dumb.
but his tone, his inflection, and thankfully he got my humor.
Okay. Good. Good. Good.
So we've gone from finances to how to raise a kid.
Yes.
in a
Yeah.
podcast. Well, Chris, I can't thank you enough for taking time. This has been an absolute pleasure. Always good to see you,
Likewise.
and please, if I know you're not going to think about it immediately, but let me know when she shows up and that she's all healthy and okay, and that'll be great. And maybe sometime in 2023, our paths will cross. Maybe I'll get out to the West Coast. Haven't been in the Pacific Northwest in a number of years, and my problem, my fear is I love it so much I might not come back to Stillwater.
Well, and then on the flip side, I've never been to Oklahoma, and I can tell you right now, one, the cost of living is a whole heck of a lot cheaper there. So,
Yeah.
like, if you want, I mean, if we're trying to save money, I'd be more than happy to come on down and see you guys as well. But in all
Cool.
seriousness, man, I've appreciated all of the time, and yeah, I do hope our paths cross. And I will leave you with this: when our daughter is here, I do have some musts that I have to text before you, but you are
Absolutely.
on the list.
Cool. I made the list.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, my friend, you have a great rest of your day. And I'll get you the information on when this will be released.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.